Welcome to Seductive Chronicles. In today's video, before we dive in, let me ask you something gently. Before we begin, take one quiet second. If stories about quiet love, emotional healing, and life-changing moments that do not explode but unfold slowly mean something to you, then subscribe, because not every story arrives with thunder. Some arrive like warmth returning to cold hands. Some arrive like this one. The night did not announce itself. There was no rain striking the roof, no wind bending the trees, no urgent message lighting up a phone screen. The world outside Ethan Miller's modest Oregon home rested in that still winter hush that feels almost suspended in time. Inside, the heater hummed its steady lullaby through narrow vents, the kitchen clock ticked in patient rhythm, a refrigerator motor clicked on and off like a distant reminder that life continues in small mechanical ways. It was an ordinary night, and yet Ethan stood in the hallway with a weightless heaviness in his chest. It was not panic, it was not anticipation, it was not even loneliness in the way people usually describe it. It was the sensation of standing at the edge of something unseen, the feeling you get when a door is about to open in your life, not kicked down, not flung wide, but gently pushed inward. 3 months, that was how long Claire Dawson had been staying in the guest room. Just until I figure things out, she had said when she first arrived with 2 suitcases, and eyes that looked steadier than they actually were. But heartbreak does not operate on schedules. It does not punch a time card and politely exit when the calendar flips. It lingers. It rearranges furniture inside your chest. It makes you question whether the future you once pictured was ever real. Claire's engagement had not ended in a storm. There was no betrayal, no screaming, no shattered glass or slammed doors. It ended in something quieter, and in some ways, crueler certainty. Dissolved. She, and the man she thought she would marry, simply reached a point where they looked at each other and understood that the love they once leaned on had thinned into something fragile. It had not broken loudly, it had evaporated slowly, and the realization that neither of them could pinpoint when it began to fade shook her more than anger ever could have. Ethan understood that kind of ending his marriage had not detonated either. There had been no dramatic confrontation, no final cinematic goodbye, just 2 people slowly becoming polite strangers in the same house, conversations reduced to logistics, laughter replaced by silence. Eventually, they parted, not because they hated each other, but because they no longer knew how to reach each other. There is something uniquely painful about a quiet ending. Without a villain, there is no one to blame. Without betrayal, there is no righteous anger to hide behind. There is only the echo of what once was. Maybe that was why Claire and Ethan fit into the same house so easily. To people bruised in places no one could see, Ethan exhaled slowly and walked toward the living room. That was when he saw her. Claire lay curled on the couch, a paperback novel open but forgotten against her chest. A single lamp cast a soft amber glow across her face. Shadows traced the tired lines beneath her eyes. Even in sleep, there was tension in her expression, the kind that comes from holding yourself together all day so you do not unravel in front of the world. Ethan paused. He did not want to wake her, but he could not leave her like that either. The angle of her neck alone would punish her in the morning. He picked up the folded blanket from the armchair. His movements were careful, deliberate, as though the room itself were fragile. When he draped the blanket over her, she shifted slightly, murmuring something unintelligible. The sound tugged at something inside him. For a moment he simply stood there. He could turn off the lamp and let her sleep. He could walk back down the hallway and return to the safe neutrality they had maintained for months. But caring rarely stays neutral. Claire, he whispered gently. Her eyelids fluttered open, unfocused at first. Trusting it is okay, he murmured. Let us get you somewhere more comfortable. She did not argue. Half asleep, she allowed him to guide her down the hallway. Her steps were slow, her weight light but real against his arm. The house felt aware, somehow, as if even the walls understood that something delicate was unfolding. When they reached the guest room, he helped her sit on the edge of the bed. She exhaled deeply and let herself sink into the mattress that should have been the end of it. Blanket tucked in, lamp switched off, door quietly closed. But Ethan did not leave. He sat on the edge of the bed for just a second, and sometimes a second is long enough for everything to shift. He noticed the way the tension had softened from her face now that she felt supported. He noticed how evenly she breathed. He noticed how the house felt warmer than it had in years. He adjusted the blanket carefully. His fingers brushed her arm barely. It was not desire that sparked through him, it was awareness. Claire's eyes opened. They did not widen in alarm, they did not pull away. They simply met his, in that silence something unspoken passed between them, not confusion, not guilt, recognition. You do not have to do this, she whispered. Her voice was not pushing him away. It was offering him freedom. I want to, he replied. The honesty startled even him, because kindness had just crossed into something deeper, something intentionally stood abruptly, instinctively trying to restore distance. Do Not disappear tonight, she said softly. He froze at the doorway. Leaving now would not erase the moment. It had already taken shape, so he stepped back and not closer to the bed just present. He pulled a chair a few feet away and sat down. Close enough to show he meant what he had said, far enough to show restraint. Claire drew in a slow breath. I am so tired of pretending. I am okay, she admitted. Her voice was not dramatic, it was steady in that dangerous way that suggests someone has held everything in for too long. Nights are the hardest, she continued. During the day, there is noise, work, errands, conversations, but at night everything is quiet. And the silence makes memories louder. Ethan did not interrupt, he did not attempt to fix anything. He did not offer advice, he listened, truly listened. That kind of listening is rare, it asks nothing in return. It does not wait for its turn to speak. She told him about the moment she realized her engagement was over, about the way certainty vanished, like mist, about questioning her judgment, her worth, her instincts. I thought I knew what forever looked like, she said, her voice trembling slightly, and now I do not trust my own vision. Ethan swallowed. I get that, he said quietly, and then he spoke, not to compete with her pain, not to compare wounds, but to lay his own truth on the table. He told her about the slow erosion of his marriage, about the way love can fade without fireworks, about how two people can coexist without connection, about how quiet endings sometimes hurt more than loud ones because there is no dramatic release. At one point her voice cracked. His hand twitched instinctively, wanting to reach for hers. He did not. Restraint in that moment felt like the highest form of respect. Claire, he said gently, just her name, grounding. She looked at him differently then, not as a roommate, not as a temporary solution, but as someone who understood her language of silence. I feel safe right now, she said, and those 4 words rearranged something fundamental inside him. Safety is not small. Safety is not casual, safety is sacred. They talked until the heaviness in the room thinned, until vulnerability stopped feeling dangerous and started feeling shared. Eventually, her eyelids grew heavy. Against day, she murmured, already drifting. I am here, he said, and he meant more than just physically. Morning arrived gently. Sunlight slipped through the curtains in soft streaks. It did not feel like a reset, it felt like a continuation. They met in the kitchen with quiet awareness between them. There was no awkwardness, no frantic need to define what had happened, but something had shifted. They poured coffee more slowly, their glances lasted half a second longer. The air carried a new kind of weight, not pressure but possibility. We should talk about last night, Claire said carefully as Ethan agreed on. So they did. They spoke about fear, about respect, about not rushing something fragile, about how loneliness can blur boundaries if you are not careful. I do not want this to be about filling space, Claire said. I do not want us to mistake comfort for something bigger. If it is not teeth and not a, I do not want to lose the respect we have, he admitted. Whatever this is, I want it to be real. There was something profoundly adult about the conversation. No dramatic declarations, no reckless promises, just honest. If feelings had grown quietly without permission, now they were choosing how to handle them with intention. They agreed on patience, on communication, and boundaries. Life continued in its ordinary rhythm: work days, grocery lists, laundry cycles, phone calls. But ordinary moments carried new awareness. When Claire laughed at something small, Ethan noticed. When Ethan grew quiet after a long day, Claire noticed. It is strange how once you truly see someone, you cannot unsee them. One evening, they sat on opposite ends of the couch. The television played softly and the background mostly ignored. It is strange, Claire said thoughtfully, how something as simple as being tucked in can change so much. Ethan smiled. It was not the blanket, he said. She looked at him, waiting. It was being seen. Her breath caught slightly. Being seen is not the same as being looked at, it is being understood without performance. Days turned into weeks. They built something slowly. Not with grand gestures, but with consistency. Morning coffee shared in silence, checking in after difficult meetings. At the kitchen table long after dinner plates had been cleared, there were moments of hesitation to moments when fear resurfaced. What if this falls apart? To Claire asked one night. Then we will handle it honestly, Ethan replied, but I would rather risk something real than protect myself from everything. She studied him. You are not afraid. I am, he admitted, but fear does not mean stop, sometimes it just means care. They decided not to hide what was growing but not to rush it either. Their first intentional touch happened weeks later, not by accident, not in a moment of exhaustion. They were standing in the hallway. Claire paused. Thank you, she said softly, for staying, not just that night in general. He did not overthink it. Staying feels right. The space between them narrowed, and when his hand found hers, it felt less like ignition and more like alignment. No fireworks, no dramatic soundtrack, just warmth, the kind that spreads gradually. They did not kiss that night. They did not need to, because what they were building was not fueled by urgency. It was anchored in choice. There were conversations about about Claire eventually finding her own place about what independence meant. I do not want to blur my healing with us, she said. Honestly, you should not. Ethan agreed. You deserve to stand on your own feet again. When she did move into a small apartment across town, it did not feel like distance, it felt like strength. They dated without phones, walks through quiet neighborhoods, conversations that dipped into fears and resurfaced in laughter. One night, months after that winter evening, they returned to Ethan's house after dinner. The air carried early spring softness. Now they stood in the living room, the same room where everything had shifted. Do you ever think about that night? Claire asked. Tall, the time he admitted wet. If you had left, he smiled gently. I think something would have followed us anyway. Some beginnings refuse to be ignored. She stepped closer this time. When he brushed her arm, it was not accidental. This time when she looked at him, there was no uncertainty. Their first kiss was not urgent. It was steady. It felt like confirmation, like something long understood, finally spoken aloud. Love, when built quietly, feels different. It does not rush to declare itself. It grows roots first. They faced disagreements, to small ones, real ones, but they approached them with the same listening that had defined that first night. Now raised voices, no weaponized silence, just to people committed to staying, and staying became their language. Months later, Claire stood in Ethan's kitchen again, this time not as a temporary guest, but as someone choosing to return. Funny, she said with a smile, I thought this house was just a stopgap. Ethan looked around the room. It was, he said softly, for both of us, because sometimes a place built for endings becomes a place for beginnings. That winter night had not been dramatic. It had not been cinematic. There were no confessions shouted across rooms, no desperate embraces, just a blanket, a chair pulled closer, a conversation in low voices, and yet it changed everything. Ethan would later understand something simple but profound. Love does not always arrive like lightning. Sometimes it returns like warmth to a room you forgot was cold. It returns through listening, through restraint, through choosing not to disappear when it would be easier to walk away. Lying beside Claire one quiet evening, long after that first night, Ethan realized the shift had happened long before the kiss. It had happened when she said, I feel safe, because love that grows from safety does not need to shut it, does not demand, it builds. If this story stayed with you, maybe it is because you recognize something in it. Maybe you know what it feels like to carry heartbreak quietly. Maybe you know what it means to be seen when you were not expecting it. Some moments do not arrive loudly, they whisper, they sit in a chair beside you, they choose to stay, and those are the beginnings that often last the longest. If this story meant something to you, you already know what to do, because here at Seductive Chronicles, we do not chase the loudest stories, we honor the quiet ones that change everything.